Then on Sports Central, we give our March Madness game preview and prediction on the round of 64 matchup between the LSU Tigers and the Iowa State Cyclones. You got LSU's 22-11 heading into this matchup, one of the top teams in the SEC this season. And of course, they are dealing with some conflict right now, having their head coach been fired recently. So that's definitely an interesting storyline for the Tigers going into the tournament. But they're facing off against Iowa State, who was kind of a background team in the Big 12 this season. They were a good team for sure, but they finished 7-11 in conference. So for Iowa State, getting into the tournament as an 11 seed was definitely good for them. And this team is definitely not one to be slept on as we head into this matchup. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this match here today, starting out with your team trends. And LSU once again 22-11 overall this season, which is certainly a good record, 9-9 in conference and 3-5 in games against the top 25. And if you look at Iowa State here, 20-12 is their overall record, 7-11 in conference and 4-7 in games against the top 25. So both teams have played pretty difficult schedules, which definitely could be a good thing as we head into the tournament. LSU's played 8 ranked teams, and their record isn't terribly good against those 8 teams, 3-5 overall, but either way, in the end, both teams came out with good overall records. And, if you look at LSU, a 6 seed, some are saying LSU shouldn't have been this high or seeded this high, which, somewhat I can see why. But, then again, Iowa State kind of in another interesting situation, because I feel like Iowa State could have been seeded higher than 11 at the same time. I feel like the Cyclones are a team. I know that they maybe didn't play as well down the stretch, but definitely both teams have got a chance to make a run in this tournament. Games will be on Friday, March 18th, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and your tip-off is 7:20 p.m. Eastern. Spread's going LSU here by 4, so Tigers are favored in this matchup, but not by a lot. Over-under is 120.5, and your BPI is going with LSU here, 71.8%. So the BPI is going with LSU pretty significantly for this matchup in comparison, at least to your spread. In the series history, this is actually the first matchup between LSU and Iowa State in both teams' histories. Here's your stat comparison for this matchup. LSU 73.1 points a game, 63.5 allowed. So, there's a good margin there for LSU. They do score over 70 on average a game, which is definitely a good stat line. And if you look at their BPI ranking, they're 16, which is much higher versus Iowa State's, which is 53. And if you look at Iowa State's stats, 66.5 points a game, 63 points allowed. So certainly the stats don't look quite as good as LSU's if you're looking at your stat comparison. Some notable matchups as well. If you look at LSU, they've played, both teams have played some really good basketball teams over the course of the season. And both teams have done, they've got a couple of wins against good teams, but not a lot. LSU, they beat Kentucky once, lost them once, lost Auburn by 15. Beat Tennessee once, lost them once. They lost Arkansas 3 times. And they were 1-1 against Alabama. And if you look at the Cyclones, they played Kansas and Baylor, 2 teams that are 1 seeds in this tournament, and they lost to them a combined 4 times. Beat Texas Tech once. That's the best win you could see of the season, but I think that Iowa win, beating Iowa by 20, was definitely very impressive. But yeah, they were 1-2 against Texas Tech, and then 1-1 against Texas. Some key points for this one: LSU 22-11 overall. Defensively, they've been outstanding. And something that does concern me about LSU here is they are a young team. So, and if you look at experience, I feel like that's a crucial factor in determining which team or what team can make a potential run in the tournament. And both teams really don't have that much experience, which does concern me a bit if we're going to see either team make a run. LSU, in their situation with not having their head coach, Wade, who's been the head coach the entire season, him being fired because of allegations and violations with recruiting, apparently. That's unfortunate for this program for sure, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this team responds. That's kind of a shock to the culture and to the team for sure. So, it'll be very interesting to see how LSU reacts to that, whether this team finds a way and makes a run, or they just get out in the first round to Iowa State. But Iowa State here, defensively, they're one of the best in the tournament. So you got 2 teams that are really good defensively, and that's why your over-under is so low at 120.5. Is because both defenses have been great this season. And honestly, it comes down to offense. Whichever team is able to knock down shots and do it more consistently is going to get the win in this game for sure. But they've got plenty of talent for Iowa State, but they're inconsistent. That's been the issue this season. If you look at Iowa State, they've gotten some good wins over the course of the season, but if you look at their recent matchups, I mean, they only scored 36 against Oklahoma State back on March 2nd, and I understand that wasn't a very important game there, but 36 points. That's kind of concerning. But Iowa State's offense, they've had good games. I mean, they put up 84 against West Virginia a few weeks ago too. But I mean, it's going to really come down to offense in this matchup. But Iowa State, potential tournament dark horse. I mean, this team, I mean, they show definitely potential if you ask me. And I mean, but on the flip side, LSU is definitely a team that's got talent and can definitely win this game too. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for LSU and Iowa State coming up here in the first round. I'm going to be going with the Cyclones here, 70-66, my predicted final score. Both teams, I mean, this is a tough one to pick. I mean, those 6-11 matchups, this year the 6-11 matchups are just tough to pick. I mean, you got Iowa State and LSU, both teams in different circumstances. And, I mean, but Iowa State, I feel like the Cyclones, I'm more confident picking with them right now, despite LSU being seeded higher and arguably the more talented team. I just feel like Iowa State is more built to potentially make maybe a Cinderella run. I could see Iowa State winning a couple of games in this tournament for sure. So I'm going to go with them in this matchup, 70-66. Probability 55% towards the Cyclones. You're over under 120.5. I'm going to take the under for this game, just barely, and Iowa State to cover as well. So that being said, that's going to wrap it up for today, though. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this game, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.